Hello, my name is Ray Bowman. I've spent 30 years in international business and I'm a certified global business professional. I'm also the director of the EDC Small Business Development Center. This is a program sponsored by the Small Business Administration of the U.S. to provide free consulting to businesses, small and medium-sized businesses throughout the country. I'm also a program chair for the Southern California District Export Council. We're volunteers appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce to promote and mentor companies involved in U.S. exports. I'm also a professor at California Lutheran University as well as Santa Barbara City College, teaching classes in international trade, supply chain logistics, and trade finance. I also belong to a number of trade associations, including the American Association of Exporters and Importers, as well as NASBITE, who not only sponsors the CGBP certification, but also is dedicated to small business education and international trade throughout the world. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about trucking. Trucking is a critical piece of the international trade supply chain. Not only because trucks deliver a huge amount of cargo between countries in the same continent, such as North America or throughout Europe, but they're also involved in every other mode of transportation, in ocean freight, rail, air freight transportation. There's always a truck involved to get the goods to and from the ports of origin and destination. So they play a critical part. So the first thing I want to go over is the basic types of trucks. Now there's many different types of trucks, but I'd like to go over some of the main ones. Over here is a 53-foot dry van. This is very common in North America. So there's all kinds of full closed container or closed trailer services, and throughout North America the 53-foot dry van is very common. Other types are flatbeds. So here's a 53-foot flatbed. Flatbeds are especially useful with heavy cargo that has to be loaded from the side, or cargo of unusual dimensions that won't fit into a common trailer. Another type is a drop deck. This is a trailer where the deck of the trailer drops down quite a bit, and the reason for this is a lot of times you have items that are very tall, and in order to get under bridges and navigate the highways, you need to lower the load down a bit, and so that's what drop decks are used for. Then you also have temperature controlled containers. So you might have perishable goods that have to be maintained at a certain temperature. So that's also a very common type of equipment used in trucking. So then we come to trucking services, and there's different types of services that are appropriate for different parts of the supply chain. So here I have hub-based truck services. So what I mean by hub-based is that there are truckers that operate, or trucking companies, that service a lot of different points throughout a geographic area. The way they're able to support and deliver and service all of these hundreds of different points is to have multiple hubs. So in order to get goods from one place to another, your goods will have to stop at one or more hubs in order to be offloaded and reconsolidated going to another destination. Now this helps trucking companies control costs, lower their pricing, take advantage of economies of scale, and it also allows shippers, exporters, importers, and other companies to enjoy the economy of scale that happens from maximizing their loads. Now, the downside to using hub-based truckers is quite often the transit times are longer because of the loading and offloading, but also too from the aspect of handling. These goods will get, because they're getting loaded and offloaded, there's an increased chance for these goods to be damaged or lost or mishandled, so you have to be conscious of that when using a hub-based trucker. Other types of truckers are regional truckers. So let's say that you're a company that doesn't have to go everywhere in the country or through multiple destinations. Let's say that you're a manufacturer servicing a particular distributor or servicing a particular factory as a supplier, then a regionally based trucker might be a good solution for you. So these regional truckers focus on particular trade lanes. So that's the advantage that these types of services have. And so they have the advantage of speed, availability, because they're servicing only a few different lanes. So there can be a big advantage there in terms of supporting your supply chain. So an example here, here's a regional trucker in Los Angeles going to Mexico City. If you have goods going back and forth, I actually have a friend of mine who owns a company that just services those points. You have a big advantage in terms of being able to consolidate cargo and maximize availability. Likewise, in North America, in Los Angeles, my home, there's a lot of trucking activity going back and forth to Toronto, where there are truckers that just service those markets. Now, the next kind of trucker is what I call a full load trucker, or what I call a load and go trucker. So up till now, I've been highlighting truckers that not only can do full loads, but focus on less than container loads. In other words, small loads, and they consolidate. But then you have truckers that handle primarily full loads. I often refer to them as load and go truckers, because these truckers, quite often the trucker that's picking up from your location is the exact same truck and trucker that's delivering to the ultimate destination. So the advantage to this is that you have a dedicated vehicle. The service is a fairly high level because you're the only loads going onto that truck. There can be ease of clearance through customs because instead of a trucker crossing the border and clearing multiple goods, they're just clearing your freight. So there's an important advantage to the load and go trucker. Other types of truck service include team drivers. So team drivers is a great solution or alternative to air freight. So basically what happens with truckers, at least in North America, is truckers need to keep logs. So truckers, much like airline pilots, can only drive a certain amount of time before they're required to take breaks. So what that means is that trucker, if they're going cross country or going, let's say, US to Canada, they're going to have to periodically stop, rest. They can't be on the road the whole time, so that stretches out the transit time. And they have to keep logs that they're audited for that. But let's say that you have two drivers on a single truck. Well, now you can have one driver driving and the other one sleeping, and then vice versa. While one sleeps, the other drives. So that way they can literally have a truck that almost never stops. So it increases the transit time quite a bit. So let's say that you have one trucker driving, a single trucker driving to Toronto. That might be a 60-hour drive, whereas two drivers might be able to do it in 30. So just to give you sort of an example of the scale. So because the truck never stops, a lot of times this can be an alternative to air freight. If you think about air freight, usually when air freight is being delivered cross-country, from one country to another, that airline's going to have to stage the freight, clear customs, the export customs formality, get to that location, and oftentimes those goods aren't being cleared until the next day, whereas a truck can go all the way through, clear customs in the middle of the night. So a lot of times these team drivers are used as an alternative to air freight. So not quite as fast as air freight, but they get there fast enough to meet certain deadlines. So team drivers are an excellent way of reducing costs of utilizing air freight and using that through trucking services. So there's several different pricing schemes that truckers use, and unlike air freight and ocean freight, where the pricing is fairly uniform and routine, truckers have all kinds of different ways of charging for loads. One type of pricing scheme is what's called class rates. So this is very common in North America. It was established by the National Motor Freight Traffic Association. So if you go to www.nmfta.org, you can look up class rates. So class rates basically is a numbering system that rates things based on their handling and their density. So for example, a common class is a class 20. So class 20 might be something heavy like I-beams or a heavy commodity. Whereas class 70, most goods fall under class 70. So toys, consumer items might be a class 70. But then you might have something that's high-end like computers, and that might be a class 120. So truckers who charge these class rates will generally, when they price, offer a discount based off those class rates. So the thing to remember is, if you're at a very high class rate, a 50% discount off a high class rate may be still higher than a regular rate not discounted for a lower class number. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. And it's very important to know what the class is for your item so that when you go to get quotes, you can compare properly. Another type of trucking is partial loads. So what partial loads are is basically the truck is now divided into quarters. So some truckers may charge a rate that's a quarter load or a half load or a three-quarter load. And so basically what this type of pricing does, it gives you the entire space within the truck. So in other words, this type of pricing is great if you have a commodity that's going to go from top to bottom, side to side. And the more you utilize that space, the better the rate becomes because you filled all that available space. This is also common too with a lot of truckers that might not have a full complete truckload. They may have, a tail section or a quarter, and then they'll sell out that quarter. Or this is also a regular pricing scheme for a lot of truckers. So again, the advantage to this type of pricing is if you have a commodity that's large or can fill an entire space, then that can be a price advantage for you. The other type of truck pricing that's common is what's called linear foot rates. And what that is the truckers charge for each linear foot of that trailer. So for an example, if you had a 4-foot pallet, then at minimum, even though you just had one, you would have to pay for 4 linear feet of trailer. Now obviously, one pallet isn't going to fill 4 linear feet because that goes top to bottom, side to side. So again, you have to be conscious of the amount of space that you're buying as required for linear foot rates. Another way that truckers charge that's very common is pallet rates. So a standard pallet in North America is 48 by 48 by 40. So often truckers will charge by pallet rates. So roughly, as a rough measure, about 20 pallets fit into a full truckload. So that might vary according to your product, so it's very important to check with the trucker on what their standard pallet is and what they'll allow and how many pallets you'll be able to fit. The advantage to this is that there's a lot of companies that charge that ship per pallet, so it makes it easy for them to price their unit price because they ship in units of pallets. Now, all these different prices, what happens if you're in a situation where you have one trucker charging a linear foot rate, another trucker charging a class rate, another trucker charging a partial rate? How do you compare all of those different truck pricing? Well, no matter what type of trucker it is, all truckers eventually charge rates per mile. So all truckers base their costs on rates per mile or rates per kilometer. So if you had 4 different truckers charging you 4 different ways, ultimately what you want to look at is the distance, run the distance between the origin and the destination. Figure out what those miles are and take whatever price that trucker has quoted you and divide per mile to get a per mile rate. So that's an easy way of determining what your true costs are, even though you have truckers charging you with different types of rate schemes. Now, there's all kinds of ways to look up what this pricing is, and here I have an example. Here's a rate of $1.40 a mile from LA to Toronto, and again, this is just an example. But if you ran 2,500 miles, a little over 2,500 miles, that would be a time of 43 hours, and the trip charge would be $3,500.32.06. So again, this isn't a market rate, it's just an example, but you sort of get the idea. Here's a site that I often go to called truckmiles.com, but you can also run Google Maps, MapQuest, to look at the mileage. And this is a scheme that a lot of heavy truck users use to determine what their costs are. So I hope this helps you sort of understand how trucks operate, how they price, and a way that you can develop some price models to help you calculate. One more note, it's also important to understand cost per mile, because if you start developing formulas per area, it's a lot easier to quote your clients so that you don't have to call a trucker every time you have a new client. You can just run the miles and you know what your basic budgeted formula is for cost per mile. So I hope this information helps you, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you.